There comes a moment in every life when you're forced to come face to face with your limits. It doesn't matter how strong you are, how disciplined you've been, or how determined your spirit is. Sooner or later, you run into the edge of what you can do. You give your all, you push past exhaustion, you grind through the pain, and yet you still find yourself stuck. That's not weakness, that's not failure, that's humanity. And we spend too much time pretending we don't have limits. Like if we just work a little harder, sacrifice a little more, somehow we'll never hit that wall. But the truth is, the wall is part of the journey. It's designed to remind you that you were never created to walk this road relying on your own power alone. Think about it. Every great climb in your life started with effort. You had to put one foot in front of the other. You had to take the steps. You had to commit yourself. But effort only carries you so far. There comes a point where effort alone can't take you higher. That's the breaking point where frustration sets in, where doubt creeps in, where the voice in your head whispers, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I should just quit. And that's the dangerous part, because if you misunderstand your limits, you'll confuse them with defeat. You'll assume the climb is over, when in reality, the climb has only just begun in a different way. Now I know some of you have been carrying this weight for years. You've tried to break free from habits that keep pulling you down at his way. You've fought for dreams that feel like they're slipping through your hands. You've been faithful, consistent, and strong, but you're tired. And that exhaustion has convinced you that your best wasn't enough. But hear me, your best was and never supposed to be enough for the whole mountain. You climb until your strength ends, and then you trust the one who was always waiting to carry you beyond it. There's a certain kind of beauty in limits when you see them through the right lens. Because limits aren't the end, they're the doorway to trust. They humble you. They strip away your pride. They remove the illusion that you're in control of everything. When you're standing at the edge of your strength, you discover the truth. You were never alone in the climb. And that shift in perspective changes everything. Instead of being discouraged by what you can't do, you start to find peace in knowing you don't have to do it all. Think about how many times you've already faced this and didn't even realize it. You made it through nights that should have broken you. You got back up after falls that could have ended you. You've walked out of storms that looked like they were going to drown you. If you were depending on your own strength alone, you wouldn't have made it this far. That means even in the moments you thought you were alone, you were being lifted. Even when you thought you couldn't go on, you were being carried. So why would this moment be any different? But here's the challenge. We're stubborn. We think admitting our limits makes us weak. We think asking for help makes us small. And so we push ourselves past breaking. We burn out. We collapse under the weight of pride, when all along there was a hand reaching out, ready to lift us higher. Understanding your limits doesn't mean giving up. It means knowing when to let go of control. when to stop striving in your own strength and start trusting in a greater way. That's not surrender in the sense of quitting. That's not surrender in the sense of unlocking the lift that's been waiting for you all along. Your limits are not your enemy. This way, they're the boundary lines that guide you back to the source of your true strength. They're the reminder that even though you're called to climb, you're not called to climb alone. And when you embrace that truth, you'll stop seeing your limits as proof of failure and start seeing them as the place where miracles begin. Because every time you reach the end of yourself, that's the exact place where you open the door for God to step in. So the next time you find yourself saying, I can't go any further, I can't climb anymore, don't let that be the end of your story. Let that be the signal that something greater is about to happen. Let that be the moment where you look up instead of looking down. Because the wall in front of you isn't meant to break you. It's meant to lift you. And if you believe that, if you carry that truth in your heart, then you'll understand that the very moment you thought was your end is actually the moment your true journey begins. Not me. Now let me ask you, how many of you are ready to stop being afraid of your limits and start seeing them as the place where you'll be lifted? Faith is not something you pull out only when life is convenient. Faith is built for the storm, built for the climb, built for those moments when everything in you wants to turn back. It's easy to say you believe when the road is smooth and the mountain doesn't look too steep. But true faith is revealed when you're staring up at a height you know you can't reach on your own. It's in that moment you either shrink back or you step forward, not because you see the way, but because you trust the one who knows the way. And I'm not talking about blind hope. I'm not talking about wishful thinking, like tossing a coin into a fountain and crossing your fingers. No, I'm talking about the kind of faith that roots itself so deep in your heart that no storm can shake it. The kind of faith that whispers, keep going, even when logic says, stop. That's the faith that lifts you beyond what your strength can handle. That's the faith that bridges the gap between what you can climb and where you're destined to stand. Let's be real. Every single one of us has had moments where we couldn't see the next step. You've had days where your vision was cloudy, where your prayers felt like they hit the ceiling, where your hope was running thin, and yet somehow you found yourself still standing. That wasn't by accident. That was faith doing its quiet work, carrying you when you didn't even realize it. Faith doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's the quiet strength that keeps you from falling apart when everything around you is shaking. But here's the hard truth. Faith requires letting go of control. And for most of us, that's the hardest part. We like control. We like knowing the outcome. We like feeling like if we just work hard enough, we can manage it all. But faith says, step even when you can't see the ground. Trust even when you don't understand the plan. And that's uncomfortable because it strips away the illusion that we're in charge. but it also unlocks the peace that comes with knowing we don't have to be. Now I know somebody listening right now is asking, how do I build that kind of faith? How do I trust when life has let me down before? How do I keep believing when I've been hurt, when I've failed, when my prayers weren't answered the way I wanted them to be? And that's a fair question, because faith doesn't mean you won't face pain. Faith doesn't mean you won't face disappointment. Faith means that even in the pain, even in the disappointment, you refuse to believe it's the end. Faith means trusting that what feels like a setback might be the setup for your breakthrough. Think about a seed planted deep in the ground. From the surface, it looks buried, forgotten, lost in the dirt. But in reality, it's being prepared. It's breaking open. It's growing roots. It's reaching for the light it hasn't even seen yet. That's faith. It's believing that even when you're in the dark, something is happening beneath the surface. And one day, you'll break through the soil and see what you were always meant to become. That's why you can't give up in the middle of the climb. You can't let fear of the unknown make you step back when faith is calling you forward. Because faith isn't about what you see. It's about who you trust. And when you lean into that trust, when you put your weight on it fully, you discover that you're lifted higher than you ever thought possible. Some people spend their whole lives waiting until they feel ready, waiting until the path is clear, waiting until the answers make sense. But if you wait until everything lines up, you'll never move. Faith doesn't wait for certainty. Faith moves in the middle of uncertainty. That is way. That's the difference between those who stay stuck at the bottom of the mountain and those who are lifted to the top. So if you're standing in front of something today that feels too big, too heavy, too impossible, don't let fear paralyze you. Don't let doubt convince you to quit. Take the step, even if it's shaky. Believe even if it feels small. Because every time you choose faith over fear, you're saying, I'm not climbing this mountain alone. And when you say that, you're giving yourself permission to be lifted to places you could never reach on your own. Now let me ask you, how many of you are ready to stop waiting for certainty and start walking by faith right where you are? Hope is not just a word you whisper when you're desperate. Hope is oxygen for the soul. It's the thing that keeps you breathing when life has knocked the wind out of you. And without it, you can be alive but not really living. Hope gives you the courage to get back up after humiliation, the strength to face tomorrow after heartbreak, and the resilience to believe in better days, even when the present looks unbearable. Hope isn't naivety. Hope isn't weakness. Hope is power. See, without hope, you'll start to settle. You'll convince yourself that the pain you're in is permanent, that the chapter you're reading right now is the whole book. And that's when you start shrinking. That's when you stop dreaming. That's when you give up on things you were destined to walk into. But hope refuses to let you settle. Hope whispers, this isn't the end. Keep moving. It tells you there's something beyond this valley, something beyond this darkness, something beyond this climb. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. What if my hope gets crushed? What if I believe for something better and it never comes? What if holding on only leaves me disappointed? And I understand that fear, because disappointment cuts deep. It makes you hesitant to try again, hesitant to believe again. But here's the truth: even crushed hope can plant seeds for something new. Even in the ashes of disappointment, there's a spark left, and that spark can reignite if you protect it. You don't abandon hope because it hurt once. You refine it. You anchor it deeper. Not in circumstances, but in the unshakable belief that there is more for your life than this moment right now. Think about the times in your past where you thought you were finished. Remember the nights you thought you couldn't go on. The mornings you woke up certain it would never get better. And yet you're still here. You're still breathing. That means hope carried you farther than you realized. It wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It was the quiet power of hope working inside you, even when you didn't recognize it. Hope isn't about ignoring reality. Hope doesn't pretend things aren't hard. It doesn't deny the pain or the climb. Hope stares reality in the face and says, "You don't get the final word." Hope looks at the mountain and says, "Yes, it's high, but it won't stop me from moving." Hope accepts the present without surrendering the future. That's the difference between someone who quits and someone who endures. The danger comes when you let your hope die, because without hope, you'll lose vision. You'll stop expecting better. You'll walk around with your eyes open, but your spirit asleep. And life has a way of making that feel normal. The world will tell you, just accept it. This is the way it is. Don't expect too much and you won't get hurt. But hope refuses that lie. Hope says, "I was made for more." And when you choose to protect that, even when it feels foolish, you give yourself the chance to see things others can't. Hope is contagious too. When you carry it, people around you feel it. Your children feel it. Your friends feel it. Even strangers can sense it. Because hope is light, and light doesn't need to announce itself. It just shines, and in shining, it makes the darkness less intimidating. So when you hold on to hope, you're not just lifting yourself, you're lifting everyone connected to you. But don't miss this. Hope requires action. You can't just sit in the dark waiting for light to find you. You have to light a candle, even if it's small. You have to take one step, even if your legs are trembling. Hope doesn't erase the climb. It empowers you to keep climbing until the lift comes. It's the fuel that keeps you moving long enough to experience the moment where God takes you, where you couldn't take yourself. So I'll tell you this: never be ashamed of hope. Never let anyone convince you it's weakness. Hope is the reason survivors rise from the ashes. Hope is the reason fighters keep swinging. Hope is the reason you'll make it when others count you out. Protect it, guard it, and feed it. Because the moment you let hope die, you'll stop moving. And the moment you stop moving, You'll never know just how close you were to being lifted higher. Now let me ask you, how many of you are willing to protect your hope, no matter how heavy the climb feels right now? Strength is often misunderstood. Most people think strength is about never bending, never showing weakness, never breaking down. But real strength isn't about pretending you're invincible. Real strength is about how you rise after you've fallen, how you stand when life has knocked you flat, how you keep your heart open even after it's been bruised. Strength isn't proven in moments of ease. It's revealed in the fire when everything in you wants to give up, but something deeper keeps you standing. You see, everyone loves the idea of being strong, but nobody wants the process that builds it. Strength is forged through struggle. Strength comes from nights of tears, from days of doubt, from moments when you didn't think you could carry the weight another step. And yet, somehow you did. That's where the roots of true strength grow. Not in the applause, not in the comfort, not in the spotlight, but in the shadows where nobody sees you fighting to survive. And I'll tell you, this strength is not loud. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes strength is quiet. It's the single mother who gets up every morning for her children, even though her body is tired. It's the man who swallows his pride and works 2 jobs to put food on the table. It's the young person who refuses to let the mistakes of their past define their future. That's strength. Strength doesn't need recognition. It proves itself in persistence. But let's be honest, strength alone can only carry you so far. If you rely only on your own strength, eventually you'll run dry. The climb will get too steep, the load will get too heavy, and you'll collapse under the weight of it all. That's why you were never meant to depend solely on yourself. Strength is a gift, but it was designed to meet its limit so you could discover a greater source. And when you realize that, you stop being ashamed of your weakness. You stop hiding the fact that you get tired. Because the truth is, acknowledging your weakness doesn't make you less strong. It makes you wiser. It makes you available for the kind of strength that doesn't run out. There's another side to strength too. It's not just about enduring hardship. It's about enduring it without letting it harden your heart. Because what good is it to survive the storm if you come out bitter, angry, and closed off? Strength means you walked through the fire, but didn't let it consume your joy. Strength means you cried through the pain, but still chose to love. Strength means you were wounded, but you didn't let the wound define you. That's the kind of strength that inspires. That's the kind of strength that speaks louder than words. And let me tell you, the world notices. People may not always applaud you. They may not always give you the credit you deserve, but they notice. They notice when you stand tall after humiliation. They notice when you keep going after failure. They notice when you hold your head high when others expected you to bow it in shame. And in those moments, respect begins to follow you. Not because you demanded it, not because you shouted for it, but because you lived it. Strength has a way of commanding respect without ever raising its voice. But here's the key. You've got to stop comparing your strength to someone else's. Your journey is not theirs. Your climb is not theirs. What looks easy for them might break you, and what breaks them might be where you shine the brightest. Strength is personal. It's measured in your growth, not in someone else's applause. Don't diminish what you've survived just because someone else's story looks different. If you made it through, if you're still standing, then your strength is real and it deserves to be honored. So when you feel yourself reaching the end of your rope, when you feel your strength slipping, remember this: that's not the end of you. That's the beginning of the moment when you'll be carried. Strength was never meant to finish the climb alone. It was meant to take you far enough for faith, hope, and grace to lift you the rest of the way. And when that happens, people won't just see your strength. They'll see the power that met you at the end of it. Now, let me ask you, how many of you are ready to embrace your strength, not as the absence of weakness, but as the proof that even after everything, you're still standing? Trust is one of the hardest things to give, especially when life has taught you to guard yourself. We live in a world that tells us to depend on no one, to rely only on our own strength, to keep our walls high so we don't get hurt. And yet, if we're honest, the places we've grown the most weren't the times we had total control, but the times we had to let go and trust in something greater than ourselves. Trust doesn't come easy. It feels risky. It feels vulnerable. But it is in that vulnerability that miracles are born. Think about the way a child jumps into their parents' arms without hesitation. They don't stop to calculate the angle, the distance, the risk of falling. They just leap because they trust. Somewhere along the way, as we get older, we lose that simple faith. We start overthinking, doubting, second-guessing. We hesitate instead of leaping. And yet, that's the exact posture trust requires. A willingness to step out, even when you can't see the ground beneath you. Now, trust doesn't mean life will always go smoothly. Trust doesn't mean every step will feel easy or safe. Trust means believing that no matter how uncertain the path feels, you won't be abandoned on it. Trust is surrendering the illusion of control, because let's face it, control is exactly that, an illusion. You don't control the storms, the setbacks, the betrayals, or the losses, but you can choose how you respond. You can choose to tighten your grip and live in fear, or you can open your hands and live in trust. The hardest part about trust is timing. We want things to happen fast. We want prayers answered yesterday, doors opened immediately, problems solved on our schedule. But trust doesn't operate on our watch. Trust is learning how to be patient when nothing seems to be changing. It's believing something is happening behind the scenes, even when all you see is silence. It's resting in the assurance that the lift will come at the exact right time, not a second earlier, not a second later. And let me tell you something, there's freedom in that, because when you stop trying to force things into place and start trusting the process, you stop carrying the weight of anxiety that was never yours to carry. You stop wearing yourself out trying to control what was never in your control in the first place. Trust gives you peace in the waiting. It gives you strength in the unknown. It gives you the courage to keep climbing, knowing that when your strength runs out, you won't fall. You'll be lifted. Well, I know some of you struggle with this because you've been let down before. You've trusted people who broke your heart. You've trusted situations that collapsed. You've trusted promises that were never kept. And now the idea of trusting again feels impossible. But here's the truth. Trust in people will always have limits because people are human. But trusting in a source greater than people, greater than circumstances, that trust never fails. And if you can shift your perspective from depending on the unreliable to leaning on the unshakable, you'll discover the kind of trust that anchors you no matter how rough the waters get. It takes courage to trust. It takes humility to admit you can't do it all. It takes strength to say, I don't see the whole picture, but I believe there's more happening than what I can see. And when you live like that, your climb changes. You stop climbing in fear of falling, and you start climbing in confidence that if you slip, you'll be caught. That's a different kind of freedom. That's a different kind of power. So, don't confuse trust with weakness. Don't let pride rob you of peace. Trust isn't about losing control. It's about gaining clarity. It's about releasing the illusion that you have to figure it all out, and instead embracing the truth that you're being guided, you're being held, you're being lifted. And that, my friends, is not weakness. That's the strongest way you can live. Now, let me ask you, how many of you are ready to stop clinging to control and start living with the kind of trust that frees you to climb higher than you ever thought possible? Gratitude has a way of changing everything without changing anything. The moment you start looking at your life through the lens of gratitude, the same mountain that once looked impossible suddenly feels climbable. Gratitude shifts your focus from what you lack to what you have, from what went wrong to what's still right, from how far you still have to go to how far you've already come. And when you practice it consistently, it becomes a source of strength that no one can take away from you. The truth is, most of us overlook the power of gratitude because we're so focused on what's missing. We think, I'll be grateful when I get the promotion. I'll be grateful when my finances are stable. I'll be grateful when I finally reach the top of the mountain. But if you wait until everything lines up to be grateful, you'll never experience it. Gratitude is not a destination, it's a decision. It's something you choose right here, right now, even in the middle of the climb. Even when you're still waiting, even when life hasn't turned out the way you imagined. Gratitude doesn't ignore the pain or the hardship, it reframes it. It takes the perspective of, yes, this storm is real, but so is the fact that I'm still standing in it. Yes, this climb is steep, but so is the truth that I've already made it farther than I thought I could. Gratitude pulls you out of the spiral of negativity that wants to trap you in defeat and it lifts your eyes to see the blessings you've been walking past all along. Think about this. When you look back at your life, the moments that felt the hardest are often the ones that shaped you the most. And when you start to see that, even your scars can become something to be grateful for, because those scars are proof that you survived, proof that you grew stronger, proof that the story didn't end where the pain began. Gratitude transforms wounds into wisdom and burdens into blessings. And let's not forget, gratitude is contagious. When you live with gratitude, people feel it. They're drawn to it because gratitude radiates peace. It creates an atmosphere where complaining can't survive, where bitterness has no place, where fear loses its grip. You ever notice how one grateful person in a room can shift the energy for everyone? That's the power of gratitude. It doesn't just change you, it changes the people around you. The real challenge is remembering to practice it in the middle of the climb. It's easy to be grateful at the top when the view is clear and the victory is sweet. But gratitude in the valley, gratitude when you're sweating, struggling, dumbling, that's where it becomes powerful. Because when you choose to be grateful there, you're not just reacting to good circumstances. You're declaring that even in the storm, you will not let your spirit be broken. Gratitude also strengthens trust, because when you remind yourself of what you've already been given, it makes it easier to believe that you'll be given what you need for the next step. Gratitude is like fuel. It keeps your faith alive. It keeps your hope strong. It keeps your spirit lifted. Without it, even blessings can feel like burdens. But with it, even burdens can be turned into blessings. I know some of you may feel like there's nothing to be grateful for right now. Maybe life has hit you hard. Maybe you've been humiliated, overlooked, betrayed. Maybe you feel like gratitude is out of reach. But take a second and breathe. That breath is a gift. That heartbeat in your chest is a gift. The fact that you're still here, still listening, still able to stand, that is a gift. Gratitude doesn't need something grand to begin. It starts small with what's already in your hands. When you live with gratitude, you stop waiting for the mountaintop to celebrate. You start celebrating each step of the climb. And that mindset changes the whole experience. Suddenly, the climb isn't just about reaching the top, it's about appreciating the journey. And when you do that, you'll find that the very act of gratitude is what gives you the strength to keep going. So let me ask you, how many of you are ready to shift your perspective and choose gratitude? Not someday when the climb is over, but right here in the middle of it. There comes a point in life when you realize that you can't climb every mountain by yourself. No matter how strong you are, no matter how determined you are, no matter how much you prepare, there will be challenges that are simply bigger than your own strength. And it's in those moments that you have to learn to surrender. Not surrender in defeat, but surrender in trust. Trust that there is a higher power that sees what you cannot see, knows what you do not know, and can carry you places that your own hands and feet could never take you. We live in a world that glorifies independence, that tells you if you just grind harder, hustle longer, push further, you can do it all. And don't get me wrong, work ethic matters, effort matters, discipline matters. But there are limits to human strength. There are limits to what your body can do, what your mind can handle, what your heart can endure. And when you hit those limits, that's when faith steps in. That's when you stop trying to do it all on your own. And you start trusting the one who can do what you cannot. Sometimes the reason you feel so exhausted is because you're carrying what was never meant for you to carry alone. You're climbing with a weight that was never designed for your back. You're trying to solve problems you weren't meant to solve in your own strength. And the moment you learn to let go of that weight, the moment you place it in God's hands, something shifts. The climb doesn't get easier, but you do. The mountain doesn't shrink, but your strength multiplies because now you're not climbing alone. Trust isn't easy. It requires humility. It requires admitting that you don't have all the answers, that you can't see the full picture, that you're not in control of everything. But humility doesn't make you weaker. It makes you stronger, because the moment you admit your limits, you open the door for limitless help. The moment you say, I can't, that's when you discover that God can. Think about the times in your life when you thought you wouldn't make it, when the pain was too heavy, when the pressure was too much, when the situation felt impossible, and yet somehow you're still here. You didn't carry yourself through those moments. You were carried. You were lifted. Something greater than you stepped in and made a way when you didn't see one. That's what trust is about. Not always understanding how it will work out, but believing that it will. When you trust, you stop obsessing over the outcome and start focusing on the process. You stop asking, what if I fall? And start asking, what if I fly? You stop clinging to fear and start leaning into faith. And the beautiful thing is, the more you trust, the lighter the climb feels. Because trust brings peace. Trust brings hope. Trust brings the kind of confidence that no storm can shake. I want you to picture this. You're climbing a mountain, exhausted, scraped up, running out of breath. And then someone stronger than you comes beside you, grabs your arm, and lifts you higher. That's what trust looks like. You still climb, you still move, you still push, but you're not doing it alone. And because of that, you go higher than you ever thought you could. The truth is, life was never designed to be carried on your shoulders alone. You weren't meant to fight every battle in your own power. You weren't meant to carry every burden by yourself. That's why trust is not just important, it's necessary. It's the very thing that takes you beyond human ability and into divine possibility. And let me say this, when you trust, you don't just find strength for yourself, you also inspire others. People see your calm in the storm, your peace in the chaos, your courage in the climb. And they wonder how you're doing it. And in that moment, your trust becomes a testimony. It shows others that even when life is too big for you, it's never too big for God. So I ask you, are you ready to stop climbing in your own strength and start trusting the one who can lift you higher than you could ever climb on your own?